Hello world. Great Giza Pyramid. Today I'd like to talk about the structure. More to the point, I'd like to talk about all of the structures on the Giza Plateau. The only thing that we're going to add that you don't see here, that you don't see there, is water. We don't make any other changes with the exception of the areas where we broke through 3 opposing sliding magical doors. And we're going to fill in the area we broke into, and we're going to refill the rocks in there. Other than that, I don't think there's any other major repairs that we need to do other than to restore it as close as possible back to how we found it in the 1800s, or if we can even go back further, the 0800s, before we drilled into it. That would be the primary thing. We're not going to add any magical parts or any pieces. We're going to use it exactly as it sits, because I tell you, it's perfect just the way it is. The only thing we're going to add is water. So, where do we add water? Well, let's go up behind the plateau over where there's an eatery up on the hill back there, where they have the area, some castle to the birds or something like that. Anyway, you notice where it's sitting. And I don't think they let you go in there anymore. Got a gate in front of it. But if you were to go into there, and there's a video you may be able to still find on YouTube, Lost Caves of Giza. I believe I have them on my YouTube playlist. Only I believe at the time they were aquifers. So we're going to, like I said, use everything that's there. Only we're going to make it the way I think it should have been. So we're going to re-add water. Splish, splish, splish. We're going to blow up the Aswan Dam, and we're going to make the Nile come right up to the base of the Sphinx. Now, it floods up to the base of the Sphinx, but it's not really a river at that point. It's pretty stagnant. But if we're to believe history that the river has migrated 100 miles that direction, we drag it back over here. Or it could be possible that this thing really was only set to replenish during the floods. But either way, we're going to put water right back here. And we're going to restore aquifers underground running through those currently caves and flush out all those poor bats that have to make way for fishies instead. And we're going to have water come out of here. Now, it doesn't have to be a river. It's more like a brook, more than a stream, but more than a brook. Remember well, you don't remember because you probably haven't seen this, but the area where it enters back into nature is the area right next to the Sphinx where they have that area. And if you notice, the path that people are walking through is maybe 30 inches or so. It's just enough maybe for a wheelchair, but it's not really enough for 2 people. It's fairly thin, and that would be one of the outlets of the water. So we know the flow isn't that great. Now the other outlet, as I believe it to be, is actually coming down this way. You can actually, if you put your little Google guy there, you can walk the path down and follow it all the way to the Sphinx. And from there the water was flowing over the edge, and that's why they find all the runoff from water. And that would again enter into the Nile and return back into nature. Coming in from here, I believe, through an aquifer. They may have been using artesian well. They may have gotten it from way upstream. I mean, it is a river, so you can go upstream. They may have used a pump, for all I care. All I care is that it comes in at this elevation, which is 80 feet in elevation above sea level. All these numbers are above sea level. I'm not trying to tell you if this thing is 550 feet. I'm telling you it's 550 feet above sea level. That's so you can look at all of them together, because when you're dealing with water, the level of water is going to be consistent. So it's not going to care where its base is. It cares where it is compared to the other thing. So let's follow this system. Water runs downhill. Now, honestly, there is a bunch of construction and stuff here, and we can worry about what they're doing and what's going on, but I'm trying to show you the overall flow, because once you see the overall flow, it's hard not to unsee it. So water flows down. Remember, when we found this, we had to dig down to find the base. So I'm going to re-add, so you visually have it, sand here that goes up to the elevation of about where the thieves' entrance is. That was ground level at the time. Okay. Now we also had to unbury the Sphinx and stuff, but I do believe the Sphinx was actually exposed. But this I do not believe was. Either that or there was a 30-foot pool, but I don't believe it had to be a very deep pool. And from the scarring that I can see from the outside of the construction, outside of the structure, when you put your little Google guy there and look at it, it doesn't look like the water went all the way to ground. But it would have filled the pool here and then would have entered into the system. When it enters into the system, it's going to saturate the entire system with water. No problem. It's only going to saturate it up to the elevation of which it comes in, which actually, if I had drawn it more correctly, I squeezed them together intentionally because the floor of the path leading to the arc chamber, like they like to call the Queen's Chamber, and then the entrance where it comes in from the outside world there into the structure, the area that was covered, loosely covered with rocks, that lip is just below there, so that the water won't ever fill into the system. It'll only fill to there. That's if it, completely filled. However, once we get the system into play, a whole lot more is going to happen. So now, just imagine the water filled right up to there. This whole conduit right here is filled. This whole area they like to call the grotto is filled. This whole area right up to there is completely filled, right up to the edge of the spillway that goes about there, and this is the spillway that goes down to the grotto area. This is the conduit that goes down to there, and this would be your grand gallery. That's about right. And there's the step in the grand gallery that they have. I'm going to just put that as a dotted line so you can visually see it. All right, it's all there. Right here, there's actually a ridge just before you go down. You don't really see that too much nowadays. They've covered it over so people don't trip. They're worried about making it a tourist adventure instead of a preserving it what it was. This would allow, well, I'll tell you what, we'll talk about what it will allow as the system goes into play. So this whole system down under is all completely cased in limestone, which is a fairly non-conductive compound, rock, whatever you want to call it. The only two places earth are touched are in the grotto and in the what they like to call the unfinished room, the subterranean chamber. I like to refer to this as the anode, and this is the cathode. This is going to touch natural earth ground, whatever the ambient energy level is right there, ground, like if you put a copper wire into the ground. And this side is actually going to be playing with the aquifers underneath the structure that are going to give some what they like to call physiostatic electricity. I'm also not yet reasoning out, because a lot of things are happening. I'm going to point out something that could be happening when we talk about the outsides of these structures. If we connect a conduit from the outside of this pool where there are lots of holes in it, and that pool, we didn't talk about this structure too much yet, so we'll get over there. But if we drew a conduit from this pool and ran it by, near, or in parallel to this, which no one's even looked for yet, it could be using that as a conduit to pull what we will learn shortly. It's the static electricity. This is like a big Van de Graaff generator down through the system and across, just to move the electrons to equal out, because nature likes everything to be equal, which is why I refer to my view of the system as the resonant ambient frequency and force, because at every point you have to look at the energy levels and where they're dispersing to, heat, where it's dispersing to. When there's a fire, an explosion, where is that dispersing to? When things are condensing, where that's actually an implosion. when things can condense, well, that's what it does. It condenses. If you have a room that's moist, as it condenses, you're actually pulling air in from the outside. It has to come from somewhere. Like if you're in a vacuum, it's going to get very less than the ambient air outside. It's just going to get harder for you to breathe. Anyway, you'd probably die of suffocation from CO2 anyway before that occurred. The water is going to be there. What I'm going to suggest to you, and when you see the system, it's going to be pretty black and white obvious, is they found a way to separate the waters into the respective gases. Primarily oxygen coming out of this side. However, there is evidence of bleeding of the other gas too, but we'll get into that as we complicate the system. But I want to show you the basics. Primarily oxygen, which will bubble off into here, fill the room, bubble out of the room, and escape through those loosely fitting rocks. And as it's fighting with the water coming in and the loosely fitting rock, it's going to create an oxygen bubble. This oxygen bubble is going to separate. I was suggesting to you hide static electricity up there. I'm still suggesting that one. Let's jump into that real quick. Static electricity, where does it come from? Well, if you look at the surface of the structure, which I didn't have to map out, somebody else did. And then there was another gentleman using, from what I understand, a stereo drone. Did it again in the 2000 teens-ish, and he has even better where he has kind of the whole skin, not just the elevations of each corner. That actually maps out the four corners themselves. You know, we have more details now. We could recreate this, 3D print this. Now, what is this designed to do? If you take away all the insides and just look at the outside, and we remove the antenna that's on the top of there, the static electricity, the ambient burst charge, discharge, static electricity around us all the time, every day, is going to build up on this structure and get quarantined, pushed to the top. You look at those waves, it pushes the static electricity to the top and holds it in a bubble up there like a big Van de Graaff generator. From there, we're going to milk it down in the system. How are we going to do that? Well, I just told you we split the water into its respective gases. What's that? Oxygen, which fights out. As it fights out, it also does a little play down here where the conduit is shaped like this. As the oxygen bubbles up, you look at this, there's a little niche in here and flat surface, and I go into that in my system down under. It'll bubble here and then it'll break through, and as it breaks through, the water will come down to refill that spot, and it creates a little water hammer. That water hammer is the reason why John Cadman found evidence of cavitation within the subterranean section. Now, he attributed it to other things, but he found evidence that I can show you how it came from. Now, that itself is going to do things, and I would really love to sit down and talk to you about how that water hammer is doing, I believe, at least two different things, Mr. Wizard type stuff, when we look at the constructions and how the pressures are acting. But I'm trying not to complicate the system at this point. Oxygen coming out, water coming in, oxygen bubble there. This water is actually going to wind up being under pressure because that air, which is fighting to get out, it's going to keep going up, and as it keeps going up, it's going to start pushing that water down as it can't fight out. And as it pushes the water down, a couple of things are going to occur. Number one, initially the water on this side is going to seep up a little, because that's just how it's going to happen, until enough water is going to equal out as a little bubble, equal out the flow in and the flow out. Because the way they actually have this top here, you have to look at this. I call it my spillway. My spillway videos, I discuss how this is actually shaped in such a way. I'm not doing it justice right now, but you need to look at it. There's look at a photograph of it. You'll see on one side there's a tunnel going in with a smaller tunnel going in around it. On the inside of the spillway, you know what? I'm going to just cheat a little. That's the niche. There it is. This right here, okay? You can look at that. I'm not making it up. There's actually this is the airway out. This is the waterway in, and the water would spill over here and in. This was again all loosely covered with rock. I mean, I don't have to make any of this up. It's their story. I'm just regurgitating it and filling in the pieces. I'm not believing the tomb dogma theory, but the pieces are all there. Everything they said adds, it is true. If somebody says, hey, you know, there were loosely fitting rocks, and they thought it was to hide an entrance. No, they were loosely fitting rocks so the water can come in and the air can come out. That would also filter out obstructions, fish, sticks and stuff, but not all obstructions, because small things, bird shells, seeds, small stuff like that would find their way into the system, and we'll talk about those in a minute. This side of the system over here, like I like to call the cathode, that's going to bleed off primarily hydrogen. I do believe there's also, just like down here, nature has a bit of both, but this room was designed to separate them. You got to look at the room. I could pull pictures of the room over too, but you got to look at that room. I have pictures of it, photo at GreatGizaPyramid.com. You can look at that room with your own side. I don't want to put too much stuff up here. I don't want to get copyright strikes. The hydrogen comes out of the holes drilled in the southern wall that were there to hide the scrolls in the well shaft, where they know there was water because they can tell from the erosion. So it doesn't matter. No one would put scrolls in water, but that's their story, not mine. I tell you, there are holes. Those holes are a conduit that come out through the southern part of the system. Put this back up. Come out through the southern part, and they actually terminate up here on the top of the area above what I like to call the combustion chamber, I call the King's Chamber. And up there they find seed shells and dust. Didn't I just mention seed shells and dust? That would be brought in as the gases and the updraft, the impurities that are in the gas as it comes into the open area and comes into the open area, the heavy particles, seeds and shells and dust would be heavy particles, fall out right there. So if we found where those seeds and shells and dust are and look towards the wall, we're going to find an opening, a crack or something. And if somebody was to work their way down there, and I don't know, I don't think you could yell real loud, but we'd have to put some sort of pressure bubble. I'm sure there's a conduit there. Anyway, let's follow the system, and you'll agree with me as well. This will fill this system, and it has no choice. Now, there's one thing that they don't like to talk about a whole lot, and that's in the back southwest corner of the King's Chamber. There's a hole about 10 feet deep, and it goes down there. They currently have it covered with a piece of metal, painted over to look like a rock, but it's there. There are photos of it as well on my website. The gas, in this case the hydrogen, is going to bubble up through that water into the room. Now eventually that's not going to matter, but it had to be primered that way because that's the backflash arrestor. What are we talking? Let's get into it. Hydrogen is going to fill the room. No big deal. It's actually going to saturate the entire system currently. And air is going to come in from the outside. That conduit does go to the outside. That's a fact. None of the other ones do. I don't care what they tell you, they don't go. You find me one that does, I'll tell you they don't, because they all have a function and they work, and I'll tell you how they work. Air comes in, 21% oxygen, 79% hydrogen, 1% all other gases. The way this room is set up with the static electricity, we've mentioned static electricity, it's all over the place, right? This room is perfectly set up to allow for a spark. How? Why? Because the opening right there, that conduit they like to talk about that's in that little squared out area, that if I draw this correctly, I'm pretty good at it. The cone shape coming down like so, and has the opening right there. Okay, that's when you look at it. Right now they have a fan in there, but if you were to take the fan out, that's what it looks like. Chris Dunn calls it a microwave antenna. Kind of looks like a catcher's mitt. Anyway, it's sitting there. What's that going to do? Well, at first, not a whole lot, but I missed the most important part. There are two things like that. The system is designed to allow a spark to occur. Everything is perfect except for this actually pierces, if you were to look at the wall, that pierces the edge of the wall. You look at it, it does. And that is going to allow for the static electricity in that room to have a spark gap right there, and that little spark is going to go off, and it's going to ignite the oxygen, air, coming in from outside with the hydrogen, which is already in the room, and that's the perfect place. That's why it's all charred up, and it looks just like a blow nozzle from like a torch or something. And the water that will eventually fill the room, as it fills the room, will choke off the reaction as it rises, and as the water recedes, it will allow more in. So it is self-maintaining. It doesn't have to be flowing constantly. And the reason they found evidence of explosions in the king chamber, which is why the walls are pushed out a bit, is because just like when your water heater turns on or your furnace, when the gas is first ignited, even your gas stove, when your gas is first ignited, there's a reaction, and then as the fuel matches the fuel and then the air, and they burn. In this case, the air is your fuel. The fuel is in the room, and the air mixes with it. So in this case, the air would be the fuel. The oxygen in the air would be the fuel. Now, what's that going to do? Well, it's going to turn into water. We already said water is going to fill the system. Now, remember we talked about the 3 broken thingies they had to go into there? Well, right now we're only going to put 1 in there, and we're going to put it so it goes to the elevation just below the boss mark, and we're going to put it forward about 12 inches. And I think if we look hard enough, we can find a spot where there's evidence on both sides of actually having something there. Now, unfortunately, they did cleanup and repair work in the 2000s, and we got to look for it. It's there, and that will tell me how far in. But either way, we replace that. That's what pools the water. Then eventually, the water spills over. Now it's going to do other things too, because as it's burning together, you got the hot moisture. Since it's burning together, you're getting water. You got water vapor. That water vapor is going to work its way up this conduit into the pool of static electricity, condense, and then start coming down. And it's going to start like a little stream. And as this is going, that little stream is going to be running. And that little stream is going to work its way down where a lot of people don't realize this, but there is a conduit that breaks off of here that actually comes down into the hallway they like to call the thieves' tunnel. Not the thieves' entrance, the thieves' tunnel. They don't talk about it a whole lot. Again, I have photos of it on my website. It is a conduit that is just before the boss mark. They had a wooden door over it, they had a fence door over it. Sometimes people look at it and it goes in, it's just a protrusion, it goes in. But if you look at the top edge of that protrusion, again, I have photos of this too on my website, where there is a conduit across the top that's at the exact same elevation as the conduits that are in the combustion chamber, and it goes across the wall east-west wise, and then it goes up and joins this conduit. So the condensation is going to come down and drip into there. It's going to pool within there. If you look at the floor, again, look at the photos, look at the floor, there's a spot where it pools. It goes in, has a rib, comes out, and then there's a spot where it pools, and then you can see where the water is channeled down the thing. If you look at the just before the boss mark, there's a step that's like a quarter inch. It's there. It's very, very prominent. So the waters coming out are now separate and then run down. Those waters wind up being the waters that go down the center of the grand gallery. The moisture and everything else, it's dripping and falling, condensating and falling the way the grand gallery is set up. You have a rainfall on both sides. Just look at it. If you were to take a little spray bottle and spray it in there, just think of a huge spray bottle. Just take a fire hose and spray it up there. When you're done spraying it, the water is all going to drip. It can't run down the sides the way it's designed. It has those little, like so. So when the water's on here, it's going to run down. It's going to pool and drip. Beyond here, pool and drip. So you're going to get a rainfall in this room, and all that rainfall is going to be pulling the static electricity down into the system. Now, I don't think that's the energy they're harvesting. I think they utilize it, but that's really for a model to show exactly what they're doing, but you can see the energy is being pulled down. The static electricity, every time a drip comes down, it's releasing enough room for some more static electricity to take its spot. And by doing that, it's pulling the static electricity down into the system on the surface of all of the water vapor, because that's where static electricity rides. And as the water vapor is condensing and dripping, the static electricity is being released into the room, but the something for it to ride on is being more and more extinguished, and it all culminates within the Queen's chamber. Why I call it the arc chamber. I actually have videos why I go into that, but you're going to eventually get a drip. If you look, you stare at the Queen's chamber, the niche in the Queen's chamber, you notice it looks like scratches from a cat. Well, look at the way they're patterned. Look at the way they're if I draw this properly. Okay, I'm not doing very good, but just bear with me. I'm actually pretty bad at this. All right. Okay, the way they're done, they're done in that manner. Look at them. Okay, don't take my artistic license for it. Look at it, and you notice there's a spot down here. That's the sweet spot, and you notice there are two ribs actually, about there, and they line up with the smallest of the conduits in the back of the structure. You know, I can't do this justice. I gotta. 1 second. Oh, that's copyrighted music. I'll probably get in trouble. All right, here you go. Okay, I didn't make up these numbers. Okay, they line up with this right back here. All right, so that right back there. And this is communication, but we'll get into that at a later time. When you understand what the system is doing, it's easier to show you. But those two marks that are in, might as well show you the picture of it. Oh, going this far, might as well break my thou shall not use copyrighted images. Here we go. All right, there you got a picture of it. Not the world's best picture, but you can see the scratch marks in the roof line there. You can find this picture yourself. You can. It's on somebody's website. That's the file name, and that's the part I was talking about down there. That's the sweet spot it's looking for, and those two marks right there. You can see them if you look hard enough in the picture. You can see them. They're there. I don't even have to hide them from you. They're marked there because as they were tooling it. They had reference points because that was their sweet spot where they want a drip to fall. Now, once the system is all, putting all this paperwork back, I should do it when I'm not doing a video. When that drip falls in that sweet spot and it falls down there, this is like the batter, and when it hits that one spot right there, that drip with its static electricity on the surface of it needs to release the static electricity. And I think what's going to occur is that water is going to snap. And when that water molecule snaps, there's lots of things that may be occurring. And again, that's for a physical model to show, and or somebody who have names after more letters after their name than I do. Okay, but that's going to snap. And when it snaps, I've already discussed this in the Queen's Chamber videos. The Queen's Chamber is set up in such a way where the niche is just slightly off to the side and the one conduit is about 6 inches closer, setting up everything so when that snaps, it's actually snapping within the wall. It's back about 20 some inches into a little cavern. That snap of electricity that's now been released into the air wants to go to the path of least resistance. And although this conduit right here, which I suggest to you right now, is actually connected to Osiris's shaft, about halfway down there's a conduit that takes a beeline for the king's for the Great Giza Pyramid, and somehow is connected to that conduit, giving the path to ground. That is the natural path to ground. However, it's going to take the path of lesser resistance, which is on this side. And when it takes that path of lesser resistance, not only does it scar the wall doing it enough, which is why when you look at that conduit right now, there's like a mark in the wall. that they've plastered over and stuff, but it kind of looks like a electric arc. It actually bent back here this way. That was that. Just look at, arcing. We know about electricity now. Electricity arcing to the Chris Dunn feels it was a different gas. I think he's kind of right there, but I don't think it was a solution. I think it was whatever nature would have put into the system, and that conduit winds up connecting to this structure through the entire plateau. It leads itself to the body somewhere within here because it is milking whatever energy is coming out of here, stored under here. And we can even get into, I tell you the whole story, am I not? No, I'm showing you the system flow. I'm trying not to complicate it. So I'm going, okay, so I just showed you which way the electricity goes. I was really trying to focus on the water. And once you see the system of the water, the rest kind of falls into place because it's all there. Anyway, driplet does whatever it does. If it doesn't pass go and it goes to jail, falls into the pool, cycles through the system, no big deal. But when it does do whatever it does do, it does its magic. That's the magic they're looking for. On this side of the system, this structure is designed to vent the static electricity, and or it's taking some and it's harmonizing itself with what's up here. So it's venting the ground static electricity and harmonizing with what's up here. So it's like a reverse antenna. And these two are playing against each other. This one is uniquely common in its steps. It does have a divide about 20% of the way up, maybe 7/8 of the way up. 7/8 would be about better. Where it has a change, like this one goes from larger steps to smaller steps and then smaller again until it gets to the smooth area up top. This one is fairly consistent. This one is designed to be the mean. Whatever this is, and whatever this is, this harmonizes with earth ground. This is the buildup of static electricity, and this is associated with, harmonized with what's up here. This can't reach that because it's cut off. Now, this is, I guess you could call it Tesla stuff, but I just think it's static electricity stuff. Anybody who works with antennas and radios and, you put the filters in there to isolate things, and that's what all the breaks in the steps are and why they have different sizes, is their resistance for the static electricity to get from one zone to the other zone, and depending on which way it is quarantined upon the surface. Nature's just going to do that. It does it today. It does it today so much that we have an antenna on top to vent the static electricity off. They don't even let people climb up there, but if they did, little blonde girls would have their hair sticking out like so if they took the antenna off the top, because you're standing on the surface of a large Van de Graaff generator, which is what made this whole thing work, as long as we would just add water. This side, over here, this one is designed to be like the cap on the system. Whatever they're collecting when it does its magic, over here, this is at an elevation where these entryways are an elevation higher than the hallway, but the guts on the inside are below the hallway. So everything is maintained pressure-wise. These two within this system are maintained pressure-wise. And outside the system is where they have the pull of the static electricity forcing the elements to do their little magic and play. This is I could get more into this. Let me just touch on something. A little bit of food for thought, something I don't think we knew about. Well, I know we didn't know about it until the early 1900s. Heavy water. Even if this does 1/3 of what I said it does. Even if we put this model into play in a classroom college and hooked a little clip to there and a clip to there, as this system plays and plays and plays and plays, you're going to filter out light water by breaking off the hydrogen, and what will be left is what they refer to as heavy water. This is enriching water to heavy water. And part of the system, which I'll point out to you, when you learn what heavy water is the opening on the side there was designed to vent off the light water as it's pooling up here at this elevation. The light water is filtered out of the system, keeping the heavy water within the system, because the light water is a byproduct, just like the air here, the oxygen here is a byproduct. They'll use it to do some work, but they don't care. They don't need to capture that. They'll get it another day. The water running out here, they don't care about. What they're focusing on is heavy water. Now, if you're with me this far, the rest is just following the system. GreatGizPyramid.com